The love for all living creatures is the most noble attribute of man. The most important factor in survival is neither intelligence nor strength but adaptability. The world will not be inherited by the strongest. It will be inherited by those most able to change. It is not the biggest, the brightest, or the best that will survive, but those who adapt the quickest. Building a better mousetrap merely results in smarter mice. A man who dares to waste 1 hour of time has not discovered the value of life. In the long history of humankind and animal kind too, those who learn it to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed. Everything in nature is the result of fixed laws. Ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. Man, wonderful man, must collapse into nature's cauldron. He is no deity. He is no exception. Nothing exists for itself alone, but only in relation to other forms of life. Even the humblest mammals, strong, sexual, parental, and social instincts give rise to do unto others as yourself, and love thy neighbor as thyself. Much love, much trial, but what an utter desert is life without love. It is not the most intellectual of the species that survives. It is not the strongest that survives, but the species that survives is the one that is able best to adapt and adjust to the changing environment in which it finds itself. Till facts are grouped and called, there can be no prediction. The only advantage of discovering laws is to foretell what will happen and to see bearing of scattered facts. There is no fundamental difference between man and animals and their ability to feel pleasure and pain, happiness and misery. A mathematician is a blind man in a dark room looking for a black cat which isn't there. We are always slow in admitting any great change of which we do not see the intermediate steps. I never gave up Christianity until I was 40 years of age. The fact of evolution is the backbone of biology, and biology is thus in the peculiar position of being a science founded on an improved theory. Is it then a science or faith? It is always advisable to perceive clearly our ignorance. Such simple instincts as bees making a beehive could be sufficient to overthrow my whole theory. The moral faculties are generally and justly esteemed as of higher value than the intellectual powers. Nothing can be more improving to a young naturalist than a journey in a distant country. If Mozart, instead of playing the pianoforte at 3 years old with wonderfully little practice, had played a tune with no practice at all, he might truly have been said to have done so instinctively. Besides love and sympathy, Animals exhibit other qualities connected with the social instincts, which in us would be called moral. Often a cold shudder has run through me, and I have asked myself whether I may have not devoted myself to a fantasy, for the shield may be as important for victory as the sword or spear. The question of whether there exists a creator and ruler of the universe has been answered in the affirmative by some of the highest intellects that have ever existed. The formation of different languages and of distinct species and the proofs that both have been developed through a gradual process are curiously parallel. Not one change of species into another is on record. We cannot prove that a single species has been changed. It's not the strongest, but the most adaptable that survive. Why, if species have descended from other species by insensibly fine gradations, do we not everywhere see innumerable transitional forms? I am not apt to follow blindly the lead of other men. We are not here concerned with hopes or fears, only with truth, as far as our reason permits us to discover it. An American monkey, after getting drunk on brandy, would never touch it again, and thus is much wiser than most men. Man in his arrogance thinks himself a great work, worthy the interposition of a great deity, more humble and, I believe, true to consider him created from animals. Man in his arrogance thinks himself a great work, worthy the interposition of a great deity, more humble and, I believe, true to consider him created from animals. Free will is to mind what chances to matter. The highest possible stage in moral culture is when we recognize that we ought to control our thoughts. Intelligence is based on how efficient a species became at doing the things they need to survive. I am sorry to have to inform you that I do not believe in the Bible as a divine revelation, and therefore not in Jesus Christ as the Son of God. I have tried lately to read Shakespeare and found it so intolerably dull that it nauseated me. Only picture to yourself a nice soft wife on a sofa with good fire and books and music. In the struggle for survival, the fittest win out at the expense of their rivals because they succeed in adapting themselves best to their environment. If the misery of the poor be caused not by the laws of nature, but by our institutions, great is our sin. Man is descended from a hairy-tailed quadruped, probably arboreal in its habits,